Hello world, my name is Ihor, welcome to my studio. Today I've got this very beautiful synthesizer here with the patch that I would like to break down for you. I would like to talk a little bit about the case itself and also share my patching techniques when it comes to this patch particularly, and also talk a little bit about the particles and try to play with it because it's kind of a new concept for me, trigger processor. So yeah, let's see. A quick disclaimer, no company has sponsored this video. However, it is supported by those of you who have subscribed to my Patreon page. Check the link in the description to learn more. And thank you very much, guys, for your support. It means a lot and helps to run this channel. And let me talk about the case a little bit, because that's something very special for me. This is an 84 HP 7U Eurorack case from Too Many Synth. And it's custom made for me, hence you can see my name over here and Too Many Synth over here. One of the cool features in this synth is that we made the 1U row movable. So pretty much it has all the holes over here that we can use in disassembly everything and then just move the row either to top or to bottom or to middle, which I think sometimes is missing, but this kind of like flexibility, I very much like it. The case is powered with Constant Lab 70 power, which is a 70-watt silent Eurorack power supply, which is installed inside of it, and with two filtered bus boards, one over here and one over there, which makes it very easy to install all the modules and not having all the cable mess. And the input is right here, and the on-off switch is right here, which is quite handy. We also installed these IntelliJ audio jacks over here, which makes it easier to connect different output modules to output audio or to input audio, and then use 6.3mm jacks. For example, this Endorphin's cockpit is connected via like an internal cable right to the output here, which saves me a little bit of like cable mess right here. And all the drawings around are done by artist Jank from Amsterdam, and then they were engraved with a laser all around this synthesizer. Very beautiful. And actually, I do have this synthesizer's big brother right over there. You probably have seen this guy in a previous video about like generative patch or something. But yeah, so that's the synth. Now let's go into the patch itself. So first of all, if I think about this patch, I think of 4 different sections in it. Firstly, there is this dual voice synthesizer. Then there is a drum machine over here. Then there is a mix down section right around the cockpit. And then the modulation section. First, let's talk about the dual voice synthesizer. So this is Metropolis here. It's a 2-voice sequencer. You've probably seen it in my videos before. It's actually the exact same setup that I had in my original Metropolis video. I'm gonna put a link somewhere there if you are interested. But yeah, 2-voice sequencer. First voice goes into the Manisitaritas, which is a bassline synthesizer. And the second voice, both like gates and pitch, goes into Plats. Then from Plats, outputs and from Manis go into the folder bifold from IntelliJ. And this one is beautiful because it has a crossfade option. Actually, I'm using it as a mixer and as a folder or a distortion kind of module. So first input from Manis goes without any folding into the channel A. And then another output from Plats goes into the channel B, which gets a little bit of folding over here. And then I can crossfade in between those, but somewhere here is the exact amount I want. And then the output goes into the Yester Versio, which is a 3-tap delay from Noise Engineering. It's actually cool that they have nowadays these kind of like overlay panels. I think I have a bunch of them. Yeah, like these guys here. Whenever you use Versios or Legios, it's quite handy to have this one that you can put on top when you swap the firmware, and I think it's quite cool. Basically, sequencer, 2 voices, mix down into the delay, and then goes into the mixer section. I also have these 2 knobs over here that generate offset to these outputs over here, outputs A and B, and then this offset voltage is routed A into the modulation into the manis iteritas, and then B goes into the morph into the plots, which gives me some sort of like performance control over here, and I won't have to mess here with cables and whatnot. So the drum machine is a little bit more complicated. So first of all, I have the TS1, which is like Trigger Sequencer 1, module from BVR Instruments. It's very powerful, actually. The guys from BVR have sent it to me to try it out. And actually, it's very visual and handy sequencer with a ton of options inside. So we have one like sequence on 4 different triggers, like the just trigger sequence for our drums that goes into the particles. Each of them, basically kick, snare, clap, and head, they go into particles. And from particles, they go into the endorphins Queen of Pentacles. And then from Queen of Pentacles, we've got a little bit more going. But first, let's ignore the particles for now, but then I'm gonna talk about it a little bit later. So Queen of Pentacles, we've got bass drum, like bass drum going into the Libra Legio, which is like a distortion or it's actually sort of like dynamics model, but I use it for distortion purposes for our bass drum. And when you get the bass drum from its individual output from Queen of Pentacles, it's get muted. So I kind of like running the bass drum separately from anything else. And then the rest of the drums, which is like clap and snare and hi-hat, they go into the Ruina Versio here for some distortion, of course, and then into the mixer. That's pretty much the idea, to use the bass drum separately from rest of the drums. Plus, I'm also sending this bass drum trigger from here into the cockpit for docking effect. Well, actually, that's the mix down section already here. I have Ruina going here, which is our drums. Then I have the Yester going here, which is our synthesizers. Then the kick drum separately from Libra goes here, which is our kick drum. And then the guy with the same kick drum but trigger for an envelope. And this is the envelope control. So this module is quite powerful, the cockpit. It has 4 different channels. Maybe it's not the best, from the user experience perspective out there. That's also why I have it upside down a little. But from this size, the amount of things that you have here, like 4 stereo channels, docking envelope, volume control, and also it can internally be connected to audio jacks. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's the mix down section. So it goes right here and into the recorder and goes to you. And the last but not least, I've got the modulation section. This is very straightforward. We've got the maestro, and then these 4 attenuverters or offset generators that can be quite useful. So we shall see how it's gonna work out and what exactly I would like to modulate going further. When it comes to the clock, it's a little bit all over the place, but let me try to make sense of it. So our main brain today is TS1 sequencer, and I get the clock from it. The clock is going into the Metropolix, and then from Metropolix output, I have clock going into the Maestro, and also getting duplicated or multiplied into the delay, because delay needs a clock. And then also from that same cable, from stackable, it also goes into the endorphins Queen of Pentacles, because, yeah, I can use the rolls or maybe delay here if I need it, or something like that. And also I use the output of clock from Maestro going into the particles, because particles also needs a clock. So everybody needs a clock lately. But yeah, we got it covered. And now, finally, let's explore some sounds. It might sound horrible at the beginning, but let me try. So I'm gonna arm Metropolix and reset it, reset the Maestro, and start the clock. So we are at 1:30 13 BPM, and I have like a very straightforward sequence here on the TS1, and yeah, some kind of like sequence on the Metropolix. But first, let me cover the synth. I'm gonna mute all the channels here on the particles. So here on the Metropolix, I have like 2 tracks, and they're running exactly the same stages, exactly the same pulse count. The only thing that I set up here is the total pulses equals 32, which means like after 32 clocks or pulses, it resets back to the beginning. Despite how many pulses I select on these 8 stages, it's gonna play for 32 and then reset, which is gonna give me rhythmical results. And then, yeah, they follow the same sequence of pitch and pulse counts, but where they differ is track modifications. For example, for track 1, I have these accumulators set up. So I'm gonna go into the edit accumulate and show you. So this stage goes up in pitch, and then this one goes down. So basically, every time it passes, it goes up and down per each stage. But then on track 2, I don't have this. So it only applies to our baseline, which is Manis Iteritas in that situation, but does not apply to plots. And then, for example, if I go into the ratchets, I don't have them on track 1, but I do have on track 2, on plots, right here. Or if I go in probabilities, where I think that's where it also gets interesting. So these 2 stages here, I have 50% of probability on plots, and also 50% probability on the Manis. So sometimes they play together on the same stage with ratchets for plots, and sometimes neither of them play, sometimes just one of them play, and I think that's quite cool. And then, as I mentioned, these 2 knobs. This one is more dramatic because it modulates the Manis, so I have to be very careful with it. And this one goes into the morph of plots. And by the way, plots is in whatever mode this is, like modeling or something, physical modeling, not sure, but it adds distortion. And also plots goes through, so let me do the dry plots here. It goes through the bifold over here and gets a little bit folded. But I keep it like this, so that I can have a slight distortion here. And then we go into the Ester Versio, and this one is very interesting. This is a 3-tap delay. Right now we have only dry signal, but let me go. So the delay is clocked, and we kind of have our own thing going, like the clock going. So we already get quite an interesting result, more interesting. So this one is a high pass and low pass filter, so we can go with low pass on feedback or high pass. So I'm gonna go a bit high pass. Regen is feedback, so we can increase the feedback a bit more. Now the pan. This one is interesting because it introduces the panning to delays, which makes it very stereo. So the time, I'm not gonna use the time, but it's like time divisions and whatever. Fold saturates and then distorts the feedback. This delay also has quite a few different settings here with the switches, but I'm gonna leave a little bit saturated thing. And now this one is my favorite. This is chorus, and it sounds amazing. Just listen to it. I'm adding a little bit. And that's our sound. Beautiful. And then we can play obviously with the Manis. but I'm gonna keep it at the baseline level right now. Now, if I unmute the kick drum, we're gonna have ducking effect affecting the signal because the trigger is gonna go into the cockpit and start ducking the whole signal. And on the cockpit, you can go quite granular. You can have different, obviously, volume of the track, but also you can have per track different amount of envelope affecting the ducking envelope affecting the track itself. So you can control it per track. So for example, on the kick drum, I obviously have it set to 0. It does not affect the kick drum, but rest of the tracks, like the melodic and the drums, it does. So let me unmute the kick. You can see this LED or LED, whatever, flashing. It means that the envelope is working. Now we can introduce a little bit distortion or saturation. Increase the ceiling. Nice. Okay, and now let's unmute the rest of the drums. This one is a snare from Endorphins, Queen of Pentacles, and the kick as well. But if I add some distortion, a little bit phase change, because here is safe. We don't have a kick drum anymore, so we can go crazy, a little bit more drive. So that's the patch itself. So we have all the drums going through Ruina. Maybe I can tame it down a little bit. I like the stereo picture after the Ruina and the phase change as well. Maybe it's a touch too loud. But also I believe I have the ducking envelope affecting the channel with all the rest of the drums. The particles. This is quite an interesting one. This is a 4-channel trigger and gate processor. Quite an interesting concept for me because I haven't seen many modules doing this. And if you know one, just let me know in the comments down below, please. It takes the triggers and the gates on the input together with clock and then changes them with some math involved, like adds repetitions and then probabilities for these repetitions to happen. It can also change or shift the input of the triggers within these different 4 inputs and kind of rotate them or change them randomly. It can also distribute the repetitions among different clock divisions or different counts of clock. That's quite an interesting concept. Let me try to make a quick demo of it. I'm going to start the sequence. Everything is muted and we're going to be focusing only on these two, the kick drum and the snare. So 16 that you see over here on the particles screen means the global amount of repetitions that it can introduce per track. And then we can control the amount of these repetitions per track with sliders. So first of all, we can change the global amount of repetitions to up to 128. I'm gonna leave it at 16. And then as we move the sliders, more and more repetitions will be introduced. And those repetitions right now are distributed to the 16th clock. 16 repetitions on the 16th clock distribution. But we can hit the knob over here, and then we go into the submenu, which is a clock. And here we can also increase the amount of clock impulses to distribute these 16 repetitions. For example, we can go to 24. It means that 16 repetitions, global repetitions, will be distributed within 24 clocks, which makes it a little bit odd kind of a thing, but also it makes the sequence a bit more interesting. So I'm gonna leave it at 16 and 24. And let's try to move the kick drum even higher. Okay, that sounds good. What about snare? So we've got quite a bit of a different sequence right now, but still it is robotic, right? So just keeps repeating itself. That's where we can use the probability. So if I go into the probability menu with Func Prob, this menu can introduce probability per different track. Again, the sliders, they get a different function right now, and they introduce the amount of probability. So at 100%, probability passes all the triggers and repetitions through. So it does not really affect. The probability is 100%. All the triggers and all the repetitions are happening. The moment we move it down to, let's say, something here, you can see the LED starts blinking. So we've got around 75% chance of these triggers or repetitions happening. Or if we go all the way down to 0, this track is pretty much muted, right? But let me introduce it back to around 50. This is a cool feature, but maybe not exactly for the kick drum, because we sometimes can miss quite an important rhythmical kick drum, like the first one or the one that we have on the sequence, or actually the original, the triggers one. So I'm gonna go back to 100% of probabilities. That's where absorb can help us quite a lot. So I'm gonna go into the absorb, and absorb is exactly the same as probability. At 100%, it passes through everything. But then the moment we start introducing the absorb, it affects only the repetitions. The probability affects only repetitions and keeps the original triggers coming. And that's where the sequence can become quite interesting. So if I move it like somewhere around here, so we always have these two original going, but sometimes with probability of around 25 or 30, we have the repetitions coming. And that's amazing, I think. Also, we can control the global amount of absorb, which means that if we go to something like 50, then the resolution of the slider changes to 50, which means that all the way up, it's going to be only 50% of probability. So we can go a little bit more granular towards applying it. So I'm going to keep it like this. Let's see if we can do something with the snare. So I'm going to go and add some snare, some repetitions to the snare. And snare repetitions are already impacted by the absorb 50%. That's why we have it a little bit more interesting already. So I can unmute the clap. Let's add some repetitions. That's cool. Let's go into the gator. This is a different concept in this processor. So this one introduces the gated mutes and unmutes to the track. Quite simple. We can introduce this to clap and make it quite slow. Also, you can control the clock division of the gate or the rate against the clock. And again, right now we have clap with repetitions affected by 50% of the absorb, and then the gate. And now let's unmute the hi-hat. Again, it's already affected by 50% of absorb. Maybe we can introduce some probability to it as well. So let's say 75%. And maybe a little bit to the clap as well. And we've got quite an interesting, ever-evolving section, but still quite rhythmical, right? Let me start it back again, stop it, and start it together with Metropolis, and I'm gonna unmute it. Now let's have a listen to how it sounds together with melody and bass line and all the rest. Let's modulate a few things. I think I have too many claps happening. Let's move the amounts back to something small. So let's grab track 4 and modulate the center, which is our like filter on the Ruina, on the drums. I can go bipolar, up and down, slow, 1/8 to the 4th, and then introduce a little bit. Let's also modulate the panning on the yester. Here I can go with something, yeah, let's go random, 1/4 bipolar into the track 3. Another cool thing we can modulate actually is the probability or absorb amount on the particles. So right now it's at 50. We can again go into, let's say, triplet random smooth into the second track, and let's also make it bipolar. Well, I think maybe bipolar wouldn't work, but anyways, let's go into the absorb and introduce just a little bit, and maybe reduce the absorb a little. So I reduced the global absorb to around 35, and then the function from Maestro is gonna move this absorb up and down. Let's make it much slower, so slowly. And also, smooth doesn't really make sense, but yeah. And triplet also doesn't. yeah, that's particles. It offers much more than that. There is like shift that you can shift the inputs around. You can also modulate the rate. There is random output out of it as well, which can be used to power the other things, you know. And we can also modulate quite a few other things here. I think that's pretty much it for today's video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope you've learned something new for yourself that you can apply to your own music production workflow, or at least got inspired to go and make music. There are several ways to support this channel. First of all, you can like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit this bell button to receive notifications, or leave a comment down below. All that really helps this video to expose to the larger audience and my channel to grow. If you consider to support this channel financially, the best way is Patreon, or you can leave a tip by hitting this super thanks button with a $sign on it. Or if you're interested in the gear that I feature in my videos, you can always use affiliate links in the description. I appreciate you, and until the next time,